Alright, so in my last video I showed how I went about carving this shield ring out of wax, but I think I want to do just a little bit more to make it more interesting. So my plan is to carve down into the head of the ring and then sculpt a lion head that will be added later on in a separate metal. And I'm going to sculpt this lion head in Blender and then print it off later on, but first I need to carve into this ring just to make some space. Alright, so now that I have that space carved out, I'm just going to take a quick picture to import into Blender and use as a reference for my sculpt. And just to make sure that the reference image and the model are going to be at the right scale, I'm just going to measure off the two inside corners of the shield and then try to set my reference image to the same exact size using the measure tool. Alright, so now I'm going to get into kind of my strategy for sculpting this lion head in Blender. And I like to start off with a basic cube most of the time and just remesh it when needed. For now, I'm just working on the face and just trying to sneak up on those proportions and try to get the scale right. And a quick tip for remeshing kind of on the fly while you're sculpting is to use the hotcut keys. And I do that by hitting R to change the size of the mesh, and then Control R to actually remesh the model. So I am using some reference images on a separate screen. These are just some basic pictures of lions' heads from different angles that kind of help me out. But for right now, I'm still kind of just focusing on roughing out the basic forms in the face. And I step a little bit kind of back and forth between doing the primary forms and the secondary forms where you can see just a little bit more detail like in the nose and the eyes. And it's probably not the best idea to kind of go back and forth between resolution like that. But my main reason is just to really help myself out with lining up these forms. Sometimes it can be really difficult to just kind of ignore the detail that's in the reference images. So sometimes sculpting just enough detail in order to help yourself out is just what's needed. Alright, so for the eyes, I just dropped in a sphere and kind of rescaled it and mirrored it over to the other side. And this is really kind of my best strategy for making eyeballs. It really is just a huge time saver for not having to worry about, having to go in and sculpt that perfect roundness by hand, which, isn't impossible, but if you can save time by just adding in another object, it's absolutely worth it to do that. So now I'm going to get into sculpting the mane of the lion, and my plan for this is just to drop in a Bezier curve and bump up the bevel depth like I've done in some previous videos, and also lower that resolution to get a nice sharp edge on it. And my strategy for this is just to use these curves to kind of block out where I want the mane to be and how I want the hair to kind of flow out. And I'm going to try to do it in sections and then just piece them together based on how they look. But for now, I'm really just kind of getting an idea of where they're going to sit. Again, just for scale and laying out the overall shape. And just to quickly edit these curves, I'm just grabbing the vertices at the end and scaling them by hitting Alt-S or rotating them by hitting Control-T. And that way I can just quickly alter the shape of each one by just kind of adjusting the handlebars, and also just making quick copies along the side of the face by hitting Shift D. Alright, so after a few more adjustments, I went in and added a few more primitive shapes just to make up the teeth, tongue, and ears. And with each one, I just kind of use the same strategy of remeshing to a pretty low poly count and using the smooth brush and elastic deform to kind of quickly get them in shape. And at this point, I'm going to start working on kind of the last level of detail that I want for the face. And you can see that I bumped up the resolution to around 300,000 faces. And I'm just going to go in with a crease brush and just make some of these peaks and valleys kind of a little deeper. So at this point, I still haven't really used any kind of like special brushes or anything. I tend to really stick towards just the default brushes that come with Blender. And I might change the strength every now and then, or maybe the tip roundness for like the clay strips brush. But really that's just about it. I don't like getting into using too many of the specialty brushes. Alright, so the last thing that I want to do with this lion head is just start working on the hair a little bit more. It's not too bad with these shapes, but I think I could do just a little bit better. So I'm just going to go through and apply all those mirror modifiers that are on it, and also right click all of these curves and convert them over into mesh. And now you can see I'm just remeshing them again to a pretty low poly count. And now I'm just going to go through and use a smooth brush and the clay strips just to kind of get the basic shapes that I'm going for. I want something that looks a little bit more flowy like hair, which can kind of be pretty difficult to sculpt, especially for something that's so small that's going to be cast in metal. I'm not going to be able to sculpt, like individual strands of hair, but if you look at some reference images, hair tends to be kind of clumped together in these larger shapes. So it really tends to be a better strategy to kind of focus on those shapes first, and then just add bits of detail kind of here and there to really sell the look of hair. And one other tip that I want to point out, especially for a sculpt like this that has several different objects in the scene and you want to hop in between working on all of them, it's super useful to use the shortcut key Alt-Q to just hover over the object and then select in between them. So you're not having to waste time to go back into object mode for selecting them. You can just work on each individual one all within the sculpting tab. So now I'm going to get into sculpting that last level of detail that I want for the hair. So I'm going to bump up the resolution a bit more. And just like I was talking about, I'm just going to go through with the crease brush and make some of these peaks and valleys just a little bit deeper and really only add detail in the parts that I want. Again, I'm not trying to go through and sculpt a bunch of detail throughout the whole thing. Just bits here and there is really all you need to really sell this look. So I'm just going to go through and sharpen up some of this detail. So this is the final piece that I'm going to be adding to the ring, and this project is really just an experiment, just to kind of play around with some designs that I have. And like I said, the idea is to cast one of them in bronze and the other in silver, and I'm still not too sure which I'm going to do, have the ring in bronze and the lion head in silver, or vice versa. So let me know down in the comments which you would like to see, but that'll have to be for the next video. So until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.